I received a great question from a client today. And the question was, she said it was a fun one. And so the question was, how do we grow in our relationship without argument? So let me give you some context. So she said to me, wow, I actually don't think we've had a massive blowout and a massive argument since Thanksgiving, right? So at the time of filming this, I don't know, that's about 2 or 3 months, something like that, right? 4 months, which is really big for them because they were usually having blowouts, big arguments, really intense, triggered in their pain body, in their fears, once or twice a week, right? So to not have a massive blowout for a few months is a massive achievement. And that requires and deserves acknowledgement, because then with acknowledgement, we can move on to the next phase of our expression. We can grow. So her question was, well, previously we would have these big arguments, we would have these massive conflicts and tension points, and then eventually we got better at recovering. I got better at owning my stuff. I got better at being able to not be so volatile and to be more patient and calm and pause and breathe. And that obviously helped my partner relax into his nervous system. And so she was outlining all the ways in which she's grown and how they've then grown together and how he's putting in effort. And previously, they would argue and have this intensity and experience this pain, and they would then grow from that. They would repair. Now, at the beginning, the repair was long and arduous. The repair was difficult. And honestly, it wasn't that of a high quality. But what happened as they started to grow and do their own individual work and come into greater peace with who they were and started clearing out some of the clutter of the past, started healing some of those old individual historic wounds that they carried within themselves, the childhood wounds and the unresolved trauma, they stopped bringing so much of that into the relationship and into the conversation, into conflict, right, into disagreement. And her question, again, was, well, how do we now grow without the conflict? And I laughed, and she laughed as well. Now, here's the thing. Now, they get to grow through deliberate intention. They create space. You see, the growth can come from conflict, which is vast contrast. So we have this intensity, this contrast. And then we want peacefulness, we want connection, we want unity, we want love, we want intimacy, right? And we want those things and we crave those things. So what do? We sometimes unconsciously create argument and we create the opposite contrast to have a rich learning experience. Or we don't want this pain, but we do want this pleasure. So let's create as much pain as we can in our lives so that we can then have immense pleasure. And sometimes we get stuck and caught and addicted to those cycles. We get caught in those cycles and we get addicted to them. So that's not the only way to grow, though. It's not the only way to keep moving through the world and keep expanding ourselves. The other way is to be really deliberate and very intentional with how we grow together. That could look like allocating space in our day or in our week. Like for my wife and I, we allocate time on a daily basis to check in with each other, right? To ask how we are. Do we need anything? Every month we have a series of questions that are like check-in questions. It's like part of our date night, but it's sort of separate to our date night. Actually, it is, where we really give ourselves a lay of the land of the last month. Like how have we, I don't want to say how have we performed the last month, but how have we shown up to each other? Were there needs that were not met? What were we really grateful for? And there's 5 or 6 questions that we asked as prompt to get us started, to really check in with each other. So we don't argue regularly. We don't have conflict regularly. Yes, we have conflict for sure, and we do our best to repair, but that's not the only way we grow. We actively seek our growth. We actively seek coaches. We actively create space in our, for me, very busy weeks and months, and I do my best, and sometimes I don't always get it right, but we actively create space to be with each other, to spend time with each other, to ask ourselves really important questions of what is happening in our internal world and how can we grow and continue to grow together. Where do we need support and help? Not because something's wrong, but because we just know that we are in continual momentum and we are beings that are forever expansive if we allow ourselves to be. So now when we stop arguing and stop coming from childhood wounds and childhood trauma, we actually get to come from a place that is healthier. It's deliberate, it's intentional, we're clear on who we are, and we're clear on who we want to become, and we're clear that we want to grow together. So it doesn't have to be forced anymore. It doesn't have to come from anger. It doesn't have to come from such vast contrast, which often gives us these extreme experiences in our lives, extreme pain and extreme pleasure that cannot be sustained because we get then addicted to the pleasure, and in order we perceive unconsciously more than anything else that we need more intense pain to give us the contrast of experiencing intense pleasure. That is usually coming from a wounded place, unresolved wounded trauma. We're better than that. We can all be better than that. We can be more than that. And that's also a natural part of our growing journey. We often have to swing the pendulum in extremes to follow the middle path, to find ourselves in greater harmony. It's a great question. I'm just reflecting on how proud I am, not only as her coach, but as a friend, that she has transcended that part. Now, it's not to say they're not going to argue again. Absolutely they are. And that's okay. And how quickly can we repair from that? Because often, side note, key thing here, the repair after conflict can be, not always, but can be more important than not having conflict at all. Because if we can repair healthily after conflict, post-conflict, that can be deeply nourishing and deeply healing for our nervous systems and for the part of our psyches that thought and believed that we are not worthy enough, we are not good enough to engage in repair, to find common ground, to be loved once again after conflict. So, there are many ways to grow. Doesn't always have to be through argument and conflict. What is your way? And speaking of relationships, intimacy, sexuality, conflict, my new book is being released very soon, and you can pre-order in the copy below or above, depending on where you're watching this video. Pre-order the book. I think you'll be very satisfied. Power and blessings to you.